The chandeliers in the historic Savannah courthouse cast a careful light, warm, flattering, designed to soften edges and elevate faces that had learned to expect admiration. The Monroe Freedom Foundation seal hung behind the podium, navy and gold, centered beneath the carved wooden crest of Chatham County, an eagle with its wings stretched wide. Beneath it, the words, integrity, community, freedom. I stood near the back of the reception hall in dress whites, hands folded behind me, spine straight, gaze level. The marble floor reflected the glow of the room like polished water. Donors clustered near the bar. City officials moved in deliberate arcs. Laughter rose and settled in practiced waves. My father thrived in rooms like this. Victor Monroe did not command attention by volume. He commanded it by certainty. His tuxedo fit perfectly. His silver hair was cut with military precision he had never earned but always admired. When he stepped to the microphone, the room quieted before he spoke. He lifted his glass slightly, not high enough to seem theatrical, just enough. "Tonight," he began, voice smooth, controlled, "we celebrate service. We celebrate the future of Savannah." A pause. He let them lean in. "We celebrate the Monroe Freedom Foundation." Applause. Gentle at first, then stronger. I did not move. He turned, gesturing toward the projection screen where the foundation's emblem glowed in high resolution. "Transparency," he said. "Accountability. Opportunity." He smiled faintly. "And thanks to my daughter, who oversees our digital services, we are fully modernized." There was polite laughter. A few heads turned toward me. Recognition without weight. He continued, "Of course, these days every organization needs a website. It's mostly symbolic, but she insists on thoroughness." More laughter. Controlled. Amused. Symbolic. I kept my face still. 3 weeks earlier, during what had been presented to me as a routine compliance review, I noticed the first anomaly. Outbound traffic from the Foundation's primary server cluster at 2:13 local time. Encrypted, compressed, masked within vendor maintenance activity. Charitable donation platforms do not transmit bulk encrypted packets in the middle of the night unless they are compromised or complicit. I did not escalate immediately. I initiated passive monitoring. Over 72 hours, the pattern repeated. Small data bursts every 6 hours. Rotating encryption keys, clean execution. No obvious malware footprint. This was not intrusion. This was design. Back in the courthouse, my father moved through his speech with ease. "Our work is about trust," he said, scanning the room. "We build systems that serve the people." Ethan stood 2 steps behind him, smiling at the right moments. My older brother had inherited our father's confidence without earning the restraint. His tuxedo was slightly tighter. His cufflinks matched the Foundation's gold accent. He avoided my eyes. The encrypted traffic routed through a third-party contractor registered in Virginia. The contractor resolved to a holding company. The holding company resolved to a board signature authorization. Ethan Monroe, Director of Strategic Outreach. The credentials initiating the data transfer were executive level, approved by Victor Monroe. The applause rose again. My father bowed his head slightly, receiving it. I stepped forward only when the room began to disperse. Not toward him, toward the side registration table where a leather folio lay beneath a stack of donor brochures. Inside were printed logs, time-stamped packet captures, cross-referenced authentication records, a structured breakdown of outbound data categories, municipal infrastructure assessments, restoration bids, security grid mapping, budget projections submitted to the City Council under confidential review, information that altered market leverage, information worth millions. The Foundation's digital platform was a facade. The symbolic website was an encrypted funnel. My father descended the steps, shaking hands, clasping shoulders. When he reached me, he kissed my cheek lightly for the photographers. "Stand closer next time," he murmured. "Unity photographs well." I prefer accuracy, I replied. His smile tightened almost imperceptibly. You take things too seriously, Ava. This is philanthropy. I held his gaze. So is compliance, I said. Across the room, Ethan's posture shifted. His eyes flicked to the folio in my hand. He understood. He had always underestimated my patience. He mistook silence for detachment. He mistook discipline for obedience. I did not confront him. I watched him instead. He laughed at something a councilman said. He refilled a donor's champagne. He adjusted his cuff. His left hand trembled slightly when he reached for the glass. The reception ended at 9:30. The courthouse emptied in layers. First the press, then the donors, then the volunteers. The marble hall grew quieter, the echo sharper. I left without announcement. The river air outside was cooler than the ballroom, humid, salt-edged. Savannah at night carries history in its breath. In my apartment overlooking the water, I powered on my secure terminal. There is a particular stillness that comes when duty intersects with blood. I initiated a formal conflict of interest disclosure through naval intelligence channels. Limited scope. Civilian data crossover with potential national security implications. The system prompted for classification tier. I selected provisional. Then I uploaded the logs. As the files transferred, a secondary archive flag surfaced in the Foundation's historical donor registry, an attachment labeled under restricted access. Admiral Thomas Reed, former patron, deceased 4 years. The file required dual authentication clearance. I authorized it. The document opened slowly. Reed's testimony had been recorded 6 months before his death. Formal, measured, structured. He outlined irregular transaction authorizations within the Monroe Freedom Foundation, discrepancies between declared philanthropic allocations and actual fund movement, payments rerouted through shell consultancies tied to private contractors bidding on defense-adjacent infrastructure. He named Victor Monroe directly. He warned of internal corruption. He stated with military clarity that the Foundation risked becoming a conduit for influence operations masked as charity. He had sealed the testimony pending review. It had never been reviewed. My father had publicly displayed the Foundation emblem that evening without knowing that one of its most respected patrons had documented concerns strong enough to trigger federal audit. Or perhaps he had known and believed proximity protected him. I read the testimony twice. I did not feel anger. Anger is inefficient. I felt alignment. The gala had not been humiliation. It had been confirmation. The next morning, I requested a restricted internal audit through the Office of Naval Cyber Operations, Cross-Jurisdictional Review Authority. By noon, the preliminary review acknowledged credible indicators of data exfiltration and financial misconduct. By evening, federal investigators requested encrypted copies of all materials. When my father called that night, his tone was controlled. "You initiated something," he said. "Yes." "You're embarrassing the family." "No," I answered. "The logs are." Silence. "You misunderstand scale," he continued. "These partnerships expand influence. They secure opportunity." "For whom?" I asked. "For us." There it was, legacy over law. Ethan called after midnight. His voice carried urgency disguised as reason. "You don't see the bigger picture," he said. "This is strategic. Everyone does it. We're just ahead." I let him finish. Then I said, "Encryption leaves signatures." He went quiet. "You accessed internal systems without authorization," he said finally. "I documented what was already running." "You're choosing the Navy over your own blood." "I'm choosing my oath." The line disconnected. Within 48 hours, subpoenas were issued. Federal investigators arrived at the Foundation's downtown office with quiet efficiency. Servers were imaged, financial records seized, communications archived. My father stood in the lobby when they entered. Impeccable suit, expression composed. He did not look at me. Ethan did. For the first time in our lives, he looked uncertain. The Savannah legacy trial began 6 months later in the same courthouse where the gala had taken place. Judge Caroline Whitaker presided. The charges were precise: financial misconduct, breach of fiduciary trust, unauthorized transfer of restricted infrastructure data. The courtroom was quieter than the reception hall had been. There was no champagne, no applause, only records. The investigation confirmed what the logs had shown. Ethan had engineered the encrypted channel. Victor had authorized fund routing structures that concealed its function. The Monroe Freedom Foundation lost its charitable standing. Federal restructuring imposed external oversight. When the judge's gavel fell, the sound carried more weight than any speech my father had ever delivered. I did not feel victory. I felt completion. My father did not look at me as the courtroom emptied. Ethan did not speak. Outside, Savannah moved as it always had. Carriages along cobblestone, tourists beneath Spanish moss, the river steady and indifferent. Legacy fractured quietly. Systems endured. I left the courthouse alone. Some silences carry more authority than defense ever could. Tell me, when silence is chosen instead of imposed, does it feel like strength to you? If this story holds your attention, stay with me for the next part. The gavel fell once, clean, controlled. Judge Whitaker did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Operations of the Monroe Freedom Foundation are hereby suspended pending federal restructuring and oversight. No one reacted at first. There was a pause after impact, a thin second where the mind searches for correction. My father stood at the defense table, hands resting flat against the wood. He had chosen a dark suit, conservative, respectable. His posture remained upright even as the words settled around him. Ethan's shoulders were not as steady. The courtroom was full but quiet. Local press in the second row, city officials near the aisle, donors who once filled champagne glasses now holding legal pads instead. I did not sit with either side. I had testified weeks earlier. Technical documentation, authentication logs, timestamp alignment, encryption key rotation patterns. I spoke without inflection, without commentary. Facts do not require tone. The prosecution had moved methodically. No theatrics, no moral argument, just records, server mirrors, financial tracing. Admiral Reed's sealed testimony entered into evidence under judicial review. My father's counsel attempted framing, strategic expansion, private consulting alignment, misinterpretation of digital routing structures. But encryption does not misinterpret itself. Judge Whitaker removed her glasses briefly before delivering the final directive. This court recognizes the cooperation of Commander Ava Monroe in providing documented evidence consistent with federal standards of integrity and service. She did not look at me. She did not need to. The courtroom began to move again after the clerk adjourned. Chairs shifted, papers gathered, quiet murmurs resumed. My father did not approach me. He spoke to his attorney first, low voice, controlled. He nodded once, twice. Then he turned toward the exit without scanning the room. Ethan hesitated. He stepped toward me as if rehearsing something in his head. "You didn't have to go this far," he said quietly. I held his gaze. "Yes," I replied. He searched my face for anger, for satisfaction, for doubt. I gave him none. "You could have warned me," he continued. "We could have corrected it internally." "You designed it externally," I said. His jaw tightened. "It was leverage," he insisted. "Information is leverage." "Not when it belongs to the public," I answered. He exhaled sharply through his nose. "You chose the uniform." "I chose the oath." He shook his head once, almost laughing. "You think this cleans anything? Someone else will build another channel, another foundation. You stopped one structure." "Yes." "And that's enough?" "For me," I said. He did not respond. Outside the courthouse, Savannah carried on. Tourists photographed wrought iron balconies. Carriages rolled past beneath Spanish moss. The river moved without commentary. Reputation collapses more quietly than buildings. My father stood near the courthouse steps speaking to a reporter. His tone was measured, framed as regret over administrative oversight. He did not admit intent. He did not accuse me publicly. Control adjusts when dominance fails. I walked past without slowing. The restructuring order required federal oversight of all foundation assets. Financial accounts frozen, server infrastructure seized for forensic retention, the emblem removed from public use pending review. The eagle that once hung above the ballroom would be archived as evidence. 2 weeks later, I received formal acknowledgement from Naval Command. Commander Monroe acted in accordance with duty, ethics, and lawful obligation. No conflict of interest remains. Short, procedural, final. My father called once after that. He did not raise his voice. "You fractured the family," he said. I allowed the silence to hold before answering. "The foundation fractured itself. You embarrassed me. The records did." He paused. I could hear the measured breath he used before negotiations. "You could have come to me first." "I did," I said. He did not ask when. He knew. "Legacy matters," he said finally. "Integrity matters," I replied. The line ended without goodbye. Ethan did not call again. The Savannah paper ran a final article 6 weeks later. Federal restructuring completed. Foundation dissolved. Assets redirected to municipal oversight committees. No photograph of me appeared. That was correct. The system does not celebrate maintenance. It simply stabilizes. I returned to duty without ceremony. Intelligence briefings, network audits, encrypted threat assessments. The work continued exactly as it had before the gala. At night, when the river light reflected against my apartment ceiling, I would replay the moment my father called my role symbolic. Symbolic work leaves no logs. This had left thousands. Months later, I passed the courthouse again during an unrelated visit. The steps were empty, the banner gone. Only carved stone and time remained. Power performs loudly when it believes it is untouchable. It collapses quietly when confronted with documentation. I did not feel triumph walking past that building. I felt alignment. There is a difference between defending yourself and upholding something larger. In the courtroom, I had not been a daughter. I had been an officer. The Monroe name would recover in fragments. It always does. Money redistributes. Influence rebrands. Public memory shortens. But records remain. And so does oath. When Judge Whitaker's gavel struck wood, the silence afterward carried more weight than any speech my father had ever delivered. He built his authority on presentation. I built mine on procedure. One performs, the other endures. That afternoon, I received a final message from Ethan. One sentence. "You didn't win." I read it once and deleted it. This was never about winning. It was about boundaries, about the line between blood and law. I chose where to stand. The river moved as it always had, indifferent, steady, certain. I remain the same. Tell me, when loyalty and integrity stand on opposite sides, which one would you choose? If you want to continue with another story of quiet power, stay with me. 3 weeks after the verdict, I received a summons, not from a court, from my father. The message was brief. "Come to the house. We need to settle this." The Monroe estate sat outside Savannah, gated, symmetrical, restored to appear older than it was. The live oaks along the driveway arched inward like witnesses, unwilling to interfere. I parked at the edge of the gravel circle and stepped out without hesitation. The front door opened before I reached it. Victor Monroe did not smile. He looked smaller inside his own home, not diminished, just contained. "You're early," he said. "I'm punctual." He stepped aside. Inside, nothing had changed. Oil portraits of ancestors who built shipping lines and timber contracts, silver-framed awards from chambers of commerce, photographs of Ethan shaking hands with senators. The foundation plaque had been removed from the entry wall. A lighter square remained where it once hung. We sat in his study. He did not offer coffee. On the desk between us lay a folder sealed in navy wax. I recognized the insignia pressed into it. Admiral Thomas Reed. "You found it," my father said. "Yes." He leaned back, fingers steepled. That testimony was incomplete. It was sufficient. He watched me the way he used to when I was 17 and had already decided I was wrong before I spoke. Reed was loyal, he continued, but he didn't understand scale. He understood risk. My father's jaw shifted slightly. "Reed believed in control through structure," he said. "I believe in influence through alignment." Alignment with whom? Those who win contracts, those who shape infrastructure, those who hold leverage. "You mean those who pay?" He did not flinch. "You see corruption," he said. "I see expansion." I let the silence stretch. He opened the sealed folder. Inside were financial drafts, partnership outlines, communications between foundation executives and private defense contractors, early projections that predated Ethan's encrypted channel. "You think this started with your brother?" he said calmly. "It didn't." I read without reacting. The structure was older, cleaner, legal at first glance. Donations funneled into consulting arms that advised municipal bids. Influence built quietly through strategic positioning, not illegal, until it crossed the line. "Ethan accelerated it," my father said. "He removed friction. He removed consent." Victor Monroe stood and walked toward the window. "You have always confused restraint with virtue," he said. "Power unused is wasted. Power without limits collapses." He turned. "You could have been part of this." "I am part of something else. The Navy," he said flatly. "The Constitution." That landed. He did not raise his voice. He never did when anger mattered. "You exposed us to federal restructuring. I exposed a breach. You handed our family to oversight. You handed the public to manipulation." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the clock above the fireplace. Tick, tick, tick. He returned to his chair and lowered his voice. "You know what happens next?" "Yes." "Ethan faces sentencing." "Yes." "You testify if required." "Yes." "And you believe this ends clean?" "It ends correctly." He studied me carefully. "Reed left more than testimony," he said. "I'm aware." My father's eyes narrowed slightly. "You accessed sealed archives beyond Foundation jurisdiction." "I accessed evidence tied to restricted infrastructure leaks." "You crossed internal lines." "I followed legal ones." He let out a slow breath. "You are my daughter. I am an officer. And that supersedes blood? When blood violates oath." The words did not echo. They settled. He closed the folder. "Your brother will not forgive you." "I did not ask him to." "And I?" "You chose your position." For the first time, something unguarded moved across his expression. Not guilt, calculation. "You think this is over," he said. "It is." He shook his head slightly. "Influence does not disappear because a judge strikes wood." "No," I agreed, "but documentation alters trajectory." He stood again. "This house stands because I learned when to bend rules. It stands because others obeyed them." The distance between us felt precise, measured, not emotional, measured. When I left the estate, the sun was lower than when I arrived. In the driveway mirror, I saw him still standing at the window, watching. Sentencing occurred 4 months later. Ethan accepted a negotiated plea agreement for unauthorized data transfer and financial misconduct, reduced term, federal monitoring, professional disqualification from nonprofit executive roles. He did not look at me in court. He looked straight ahead. Victor Monroe remained in the gallery, immovable. Afterward, reporters approached him again. "This is a family matter," he said calmly. "We will rebuild." Rebuild what? The foundation was dissolved, the emblem archived, the contracts terminated. But influence shifts quietly into other structures. 2 weeks after sentencing, Naval Intelligence forwarded a secondary review. Additional infrastructure bids across Georgia had shown irregular alignment with private advisory firms. Different names, similar architecture. I read the patterns carefully. Not identical, evolved. Someone had studied the collapse, learned from it, adapted. The system had been cleansed. The network had not vanished. I initiated another inquiry, this time broader. No family name attached, just signatures, encryption residue, financial clustering. My father called once more. "You're still digging?" "Yes." "At what point does this stop being duty and start being obsession?" "When patterns end." "You're alone in this." "I'm not." He was quiet. "You could have inherited everything," he said finally. "I inherited clarity." "And what does clarity give you?" "Peace." That word unsettled him more than accusation ever could. Peace does not negotiate. It does not seek approval. It stands. I continued the review, not as a daughter correcting a father, not as a sister condemning a brother, as an officer mapping networks. Savannah returned to normal. Tourists walked the riverfront. The courthouse hosted weddings again. The Monroe name appeared less frequently in print, but every system leaves a trace, and I follow traces. Tell me, when wrongdoing shifts, shape instead of disappearing, do you confront it again, or do you accept that influence simply evolves? If you're ready, I can continue with the next phase. The pattern did not disappear, it refined itself. 6 weeks after Ethan's sentencing, I received a classified briefing request routed through Naval Cyber Operations. Subject line, Infrastructure Procurement Anomaly, Southeastern Corridor. No names attached, only code. I entered the secure room at 700. Fluorescent lighting, no windows, 2 analysts already seated, screens active, maps layered in quiet gradients of red and blue. "Commander Monroe," one of them said without looking up, "we've identified procurement clusters following the Monroe case exposure." I did not sit immediately. "Define cluster," I said. "Private advisory firms winning municipal data contracts within 90 days of structured philanthropic engagement. Different foundations, different boards, same rhythm. Encrypted metadata flagged similar key rotation cadence to the exfiltration channel Ethan had engineered. Not identical, improved." "Origin?" I asked. "Unknown primary architect," the analyst replied. "But there's an advisory consortium operating under a shell out of Jacksonville." Jacksonville. I did not react. The analyst continued. 3 of the board members previously attended Monroe Freedom Foundation events. One is a former donor. One is a consultant who resigned 2 days before federal seizure. Influence does not dissolve. It migrates. I took a seat. "Packet capture?" I asked. They rotated the screen. There it was, layered encryption riding beneath legitimate municipal traffic, bursts occurring during maintenance windows, authentication routed through advisory accounts. The cadence felt familiar, not because of Ethan, because of structure. "Timeline?" I asked. "Activated approximately 30 days before Monroe sentencing." Preemptive. Someone anticipated containment. Someone adjusted. I leaned back slightly. "Begin trace through financial advisory overlap," I said. "Not technology vendors. Look at who recommended the vendors." The analyst paused. "That's outside standard digital review." Exactly. By 1300, we had 3 overlapping financial consultants who appeared across multiple infrastructure bids in Savannah, Brunswick, and Jacksonville. One name surfaced twice. Marcus Hale, former strategic advisor to the Monroe Freedom Foundation, resigned before seizure. No charges filed, no testimony given, no public attention. "Background," I said. The analyst tapped keys. Hale held no criminal record. MBA, military family history, defense-adjacent consulting experience. His advisory contract with the Monroe Foundation ended 3 days before Admiral Reed's testimony was formally sealed. Not coincidence, containment. I felt the alignment settle. My father had said, "Influence does not disappear." He was correct, but he had misjudged one thing. Influence leaves architects, and architects leave signatures. That evening, I drove past the Monroe estate without turning in. The gates were closed, lights on in the study. I did not call. Instead, I drafted a classified cross-agency memo recommending expanded federal oversight of philanthropic-adjacent advisory consortia, tied to municipal infrastructure bids, language precise. No mention of my father, no mention of Ethan, only pattern. Systems respond to pattern more reliably than emotion. 3 days later, I received a call from a federal investigator who had led the Monroe prosecution. "Commander," he said, voice neutral, "you're seeing it too." "Yes. We suspected migration, but lacked technical continuity. You have it now." He paused. "Is this personal for you?" "No." He did not press. "Forward everything," he said. I did. 48 hours after that, a quiet warrant was issued for digital asset review of Hale's advisory firm. Not public, not yet. Savannah remained calm. Tour boats drifted past River Street. Wedding carriages returned to the courthouse steps. Public memory shortens quickly when scandal lacks spectacle. Marcus Hale flew to Atlanta the morning after the warrant was executed. He did not know, not yet. His firm's servers were mirrored overnight. The encrypted cadence matched the Monroe channel at 62% structural similarity. Not replication, evolution. Someone had learned from the first exposure, refined the approach, reduced trace. But one error remained. Authentication tokens still aligned to Foundation-era advisory templates. Legacy code, left behind. That was enough. I received a call from my father that night. "You're expanding," he said. "Yes. You're targeting consultants now. I'm mapping systems. You think Hale operates independently?" "No." Silence. "You always did see further than you spoke," he said, "and you always assumed silence meant agreement." Another pause. "If you pursue this," he continued, "you dismantle more than advisory firms. I dismantle channels. You dismantle alliances. Alliances built on concealed leverage. You dismantle future opportunity. Opportunity built on breach." He exhaled slowly. "You don't understand how influence stabilizes cities. It destabilizes them when it hides. You're turning Savannah into a federal case. I'm preventing it from becoming one again." His voice lowered. "Hale didn't design the structure alone." "I know." "Then ask yourself who benefits from your persistence." "I already have." He did not say more. That was answer enough. 2 weeks later, federal authorities executed coordinated audits across 3 advisory firms. Marcus Hale's name appeared in sealed affidavits. The press did not yet know, but Savannah's upper tier did. Donor luncheons quieted. Procurement committees delayed votes. Infrastructure bids were restructured under public oversight review. No arrests, not yet. But the migration stalled. Channels collapsed before fully stabilizing. Influence without concealment struggles. I received a formal commendation from Naval Cyber Operations for pattern continuity analysis across civilian sector threat migration. Short, clinical, appropriate. I did not attend any ceremony. Instead, I returned to Savannah one final time, not to the courthouse, not to the estate, to the river. I stood along the railing where cargo ships moved slowly past. Power in motion does not announce itself. It moves because it must. My father called once more. "You could have stopped after Ethan," he said. "No." "You wanted the route." "Yes." "And now?" "Now the structure recalibrates under light." "You believe in light too much?" "I believe in record." He was quiet for a long time. "You're not my opponent," he said finally. "I never was. And yet you stand against everything I built. I stand within what I swore." The river carried sound away. "I don't recognize you anymore," he said. "You never did," I replied. The call ended. Marcus Hale resigned from his advisory firm 3 days later, publicly for health reasons, privately under federal monitoring, no headlines, no gala, just quiet correction. Savannah's Procurement Oversight Board implemented new digital transparency requirements, encryption audits mandated for philanthropic partnerships tied to municipal bids. The system tightened, not because of me, because of documentation, legacy fractured, influence recalculated, structure endured. I did not celebrate. I returned to duty. Tell me, when corruption adapts instead of retreating, would you follow it further, even if it leads back to familiar names? If you're ready, we can continue.